on mute.
Oh,
Now you
can you hear now? It's unmuted now. Can you hear now? They say they don't hear anything.
They will. There's about an 8-second delay.
Okay, there's about an 8-second delay.
Oh, so you can believe us if we have to.
Oh, the joy of Zoom. Or actually, this is live YouTube.
Yeah. No, well, I think I better clean up what I was planning on saying.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, thank you.
blocking the view?
It isn't. I can sure that earlier.
Got a big one.
So I'm going to start with reading Psalm 24, Psalm 23 with you, Julia. You can help me. Yeah. I'm going to start with reading Tehillim, Psalm 23, and do together with Julia, which is Lorraine Gelton. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנודה שירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני.
A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters.
נפשי שובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צאן מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני.
He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff comfort me.
תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צהרי, גישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית השם לאורך ימים.
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and loving kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
The word for funeral in Hebrew is levaya. We are here to, which means to walk with, to be beside. We are here for us and for Lorraine to walk together in a way until we have to part. I'd like to ask John to say a few words.
Well, it's customary at a funeral to give a little capsule bio of the decedent, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you about how my mother was born in Brooklyn, how she met my father when she was 12 years old, how she wrote letters to various servicemen when they were overseas during World War II, but only married one of those servicemen when he returned. I won't tell you about how she delayed completing her education in order to be able to spend more time with her children, and went back to school and only got her college degree and her CPA when she was 40, or about how she worked for several decades in an accounting firm with my father, or about how she came to Denver and spent the last 20 years of her life here. But I am going to mention a few other things. Since she was 80, we've been giving my mother a big special birthday party every 5 years. And the most recent one of those was at her 90th. And I know a lot of you were there, and we made up special shirts. And on the drive over, when Julie and I drove here from Michigan, I wore my Lorraine's 90th shirt. So that's my prop for this talk. We were looking forward to planning her 95th birthday party, but that won't happen. Last night, Julie and I got dinner from Little Ollie's. Little Ollie's is a restaurant in Denver that was my mother's favorite restaurant. And the last time I saw my mother, which was almost exactly a year ago, we went out to dinner at Little Ollie's, and we would have gone the next night also, except I put my foot down. If Little Ollie's goes out of business, people will say that it was because of the pandemic, but we all know that it's because they lost their best customer. I've got one more story. This is from a long time ago. When I was 22 years old, I was heading off overseas for adventure, what ended up being 3 years traveling around the world with a backpack. And my mother gave me a ride to the airport when I was leaving. And as we were saying goodbye, she looked at my hand and she said, "Are you sure you want to take that ring with you?" Now, the ring she was talking about was a gold pinky ring with a diamond in it. It originally belonged to my father's father, and then to my father. And then when I was 13, he gave it to me. And I've been wearing it continuously since then. And I realized when she said that it was a pretty bad idea heading off to parts unknown with this flashy looking gold diamond ring on. And I said, "You're right." And I handed it to her, and she kept it for me. That scene just has stuck in my mind ever since then. And to me, it just highlights a couple of things about my mother. One is that she was always thinking, and she would notice things around her that other people didn't notice. And also when she thought that I was doing something wrong, that I needed to be corrected, she didn't just tell me to do things differently or tell me I was making a mistake. She would explain why I was doing something wrong and why I needed to do something different, so that I felt I was making the decision myself. My sister Lainey wrote something, and she asked me to read it for her since she couldn't be here. When I decided to become a social worker, I applied to the college that was closest to me, which was the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, Georgia. I was living in Atlanta at the time. Relocating to a small southern town was a culture shock, to say the least, and it was a bad fit for me. By the end of my first week there, I called home in a panic, very upset, thinking I had made a bad decision and didn't know how to back out of it. The next day, I went to my classes and then drove back to my apartment. As I pulled into the complex, I saw someone sitting on the front steps. It was Mom. She flew into Atlanta and rented a car and found her way to Athens into my apartment. She stayed for a few days, enough to settle me down, then went back home to Miami. I've never forgotten the image of her sitting on my front steps when I was too embarrassed to ask for help. I guess it worked, since Lainey successfully completed her studies and became a social worker. So now I'd like to ask Will to come up and say his part.
Hi there, I'm Will Bronstein, Lorraine's grandson. I first wanted to acknowledge Shuki for leading us through this today. It's very special that you're here and you're able to do this to the whole family. My sister, my siblings, my sister and brother and I have had different memories with my grandma, which is very special. And my brother and sister both wrote some beautiful words that I'm going to start with. My brother really started bonding with grandma in 1990 or so. I'm sorry, 1999, when my brother was 10. My grandma and grandpa moved to Denver, and these are Phil's words. I was fortunate to grow up in the same city as grandma. I have memories of many Shabbat dinners together, trips to movie theaters, and pieces of mandelbread consumed, mostly by me. On our family vacation to Vancouver, I remember all of us, including Grandma, putting on a full-length, bright red overcoat to go whale watching in a small boat that I remember as a little more than a rubber raft. This is true. You can see pictures, and Grandma's hair is peeled back from the wind. We were going so fast, but she loved it. I remember many years earlier being in Grandma's home. I was scared because there was a storm outside, and if memory serves me correctly, a tornado warning. We built a wooden dinosaur model together to pass the time. For me, it's these many little memories stitched together that describe my relationship with Grandma and how meaningful it was to me. I'm not sure how many episodes of Jeopardy we watched together, how many times we did the 30 or so minute drive to Sweet Tomatoes to have lunch together, or how many times I rode the 8 minutes by bike from my parents' house to her place in Lowry. But I do know that I miss her, and I'm grateful for the time that I had with her. It was beautiful, Phil. And Rosie sent over some beautiful words as well, talking about different memories of Grandma. I have so many memories of my grandmother, visiting my grandparents at their house in Florida and reading with her on the back porch amidst my grandfather's amazing plants. Riding the rides at Disney World. I was scared going through the Haunted Mansion, but my grandmother pointed out the silly parts of the ride and made me laugh. Doing the New York Times Sunday crossword together while I was in high school. She did most of the heavy lifting on those, to be honest, but it was such a pleasure to sit at her kitchen table and work through the puzzles together. Baking chocolate chip model bread together. Watching her devotion to my wonderful grandfather, her husband, Stuart. I will never forget her love for him, the care she took of him in his illness, and how she talked about him and her memories of their life together. She was a smart, strong, beautiful, hardworking woman with a quick wit and a brilliant mind. I have always looked up to her and will miss her so much. It's beautiful. And, you know, Rosie, Phil, and I, my two siblings, we all have memories of Grandma, both separate, where we were having special moments just with Grandma and together. For me, my moments growing up were visiting them in Miami, and they'd come to visit us in Colorado. And then I got a second act when Grandma turned into Gigi, which was a nickname given to her by one of her great grandkids. She has 5 great grandkids. So in Miami, we'd visit, and my memories are going to the University of Miami baseball games. Her and her father, her and Stuart, my grandpa, were big supporters. Some of my most cherished memories are going there, going to the parrot jungle, actually with Uncle John too, and Julia, and going to the Seaquarium, going to Walt Disney World, going to Epcot. When my mom was pregnant with Phil, my parents went down to Key West for a couple days, and that allowed my sister and I to have a couple days just with my grandma and grandpa. And those were some of the most special days. I remember distinctly the Epcot, actually in particular there. But my most salient or important memories are the simplest ones, the ones of waking up in the morning at Grandma and Grandpa's house and running in their bed and snuggling no matter what time. Of going out back in the morning and eating breakfast on their back porch with my grandpa's hundreds of plants, his jungle, and Grandma reading her Ellery Queen mystery magazines and poppy seed bread. Those are the memories that really will always stay with me. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the lions. My grandparents had 2 white stone lions out front that I think everyone climbed. I know my sister and I spent many hours climbing, pretending, and I'm sure there are many other people who had that same experience. And again, something that I'll always cherish. I went to college, and that was around when my grandfather got sick. That's when my grandma and grandpa moved back to Denver. And Grandma made her own life here. It was amazing. She had her own community. She had her own friends. she took care of her husband, Stuart, and she took care of herself. I had friends that I grew up with in Denver who lived here after high school, and they'd say, "Hey, I think I saw your grandma at the gym." I'd say, "Oh yeah. Well, she has water aerobics Monday and Thursday, and then Friday I think it's a little earlier, but she was there. She did it because she took her health seriously. She worked hard, but she also always appreciated a glass of wine at the end of the day. She understood balance. And once my little family moved back to Denver, the joyous Shabbat dinners with her were immense. She loved my son Leo Stewart, who's named after Grandpa. But with Ella, my 2-year-old, it was just love at first sight. Something just clicked and they bonded. It was mutual. Gigi would always say, "Your daughter's amazing. She never cries," and she didn't for a while. And then she did cry, but Gigi still never heard her cry. So it was selective hearing. And even as of last year, we were having dinners at Shabbat dinners at my parents', going to her favorite restaurants, like Uncle John said, going to Cucina Calori, having her wine, her eggplant parm. And then COVID flipped everything, but Grandma couldn't have been in a better place during COVID. She had a FaceTime and video call schedule that was booked. Every week she was booked up. And for me, I had a moment every week where Ella, my 2-year-old, would wait for the call on my iPad, and she knows to push the little green button, and her face would appear and Gigi's face would appear at the same time, and they'd both have the same smile. And I know that Gigi cherished that, and I know that Ella cherished it, and I cherish it. And those kind of moments will always stick with me. And even a few weeks ago, Ella was giving me a hard time, and Gigi said, "You just wait till she gives you a hard time." And Gigi is the matriarch, as Uncle John was describing her at her 90th birthday, in her regal blue dress, surrounded by friends and family at the Broadmoor Hotel, as happy as she could be. Those are the moments that I'll remember about Grandma, about Gigi. I said earlier it was one of the great grandkids who came up with the name Gigi, but it was actually my sister's oldest daughter, Yael. Yael is bravely battling and beating the heck out of cancer. She had a monster operation 2 weeks ago and another one last week. And Baruch Hashem, it went as well as it could have. In a sense, as this light of Gigi has moved on, Yael's is getting stronger. If you know Gigi, she would have made that trade in a second. May her strength be behind Yael and behind all of us. Grandma, Gigi, your name will forever be a light and a blessing in our lives.
Thank you, Will. I also want to tell you how grateful I am that you guys asked me to do this. I had a wonderful relationship with Lorraine and beautiful memories. I also want to acknowledge all her family, because if you really look at the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, you really see what a beautiful and full life surrounded by family she had. So Lorraine was the wife of Stuart, and she was the mother of Claudia, Mark, John, and John, and Lainey. She was a grandmother for Julia and Daniel, Will, with his wife Laura, Rosie and Saul, and Philip and Varsha. Her great-grandchildren was Leo and Ella, Will, and Yael, and we really have Yael in our thoughts for beautiful, beautiful healing in Refana for Dahlia and for Johnny. I have so many memories with Lorraine. Many from family gathering, but the one I really want to talk about is that Mark and Claudia was really kind enough to invite me after Foma died, after my wife died, to Friday nights and to really make sure that I knew that I'm part of the family. I really treasure that. And one time I was sitting on the sofa with Lorraine, and she said to me, "Welcome to the club." And she told me, "You are now part of a pretty miserable club of people that just lost their partners for life, their loved one." And she says that many people come and will say to you different things and many things, because in some ways you are now part of a different club, of the unfortunate club. And she said some of them would not say good things, but just really know that everybody really, really mean well. And she said, but you know, some people will tell you that just with time things get better or heal, and that's not true. Time doesn't really heal anything. All that we can do is just live with it, do the best we can, and always just do the best we can, and that's it. And I really treasure that. It's for me, it really came in a good time. I also had many beautiful memories from driving her back, and she always used to marvel that I could just say to my phone her address, and my phone would immediately say Lorraine Rothchild, home. And I was so stuck by this memory that actually this morning I took my phone and I put her address, and that's what my phone said to me, Lorraine, going home. And that's how I like to remember her, with her humor, wit, and really matter of fact. He is a Habaruch, and I'd like to call Julia grandchild as well.
There are many things that I'll always remember about Grandma. One particular part of her that comes to me today is her sense of humor, which has been mentioned. At every Rothchild family gathering with my cousins Will, Rosie, and Phil, there's always a lot of laughter. Of course, a good amount of that is attributable to the Bronstein funny gene, but it's also Lorraine humor inherited over 3 generations. She had a quick, dry wit, which was sometimes sarcastic, sometimes acerbic, usually polite. She took a lot of things in life seriously, including raising her children with discipline, mandel bread baking techniques, and tea time. But through it all, she employed her signature understated humor, which showed you that you can take life seriously without taking yourself too seriously. A remarkable thing about Grandma's sense of humor was its staying power. Even when her short-term memory had declined, she remained funny and self-aware. On a Zoom call just a few months ago, Daniel and I asked her whether she was reading anything. She picked up a book that had a bookmark wedged in halfway through and said, "Yes, this." We asked her if she liked it, and she paused, then said, "I don't remember, but it must be good if I've gotten this far in." Her recognition of her own reality in that moment mixed with a humorous edge is classic grandma to me. It's a blend of candor and witticism, which exists also in her children and grandchildren. And that shared sensibility is just one gift among the many that grandma has given us. Speaking of Zoom calls, as Will mentioned, I'd like to say something that I'm grateful for in this difficult moment. When COVID began, Aunt Claudia and then Aunt Lainey arranged weekly Zoom calls for family members. Suddenly, my brother Daniel and I were talking to Grandma face to face every Monday. Never having lived in the same city, we'd never visited so regularly before. Daniel told her about his computer science research, and I talked about my magazine work. We showed her the snow outside our window and the art on the walls and family photo albums. She commented on how improved Daniel was after his haircut and told us some stories of her own about Miami and the family. At the end of each call, we'd say, "See you next week." Our last call with Grandma was on February 1st, 1 week ago today. I can say on behalf of my brother and myself that in the last year of her life, despite the distance, we were in some ways closer to Grandma than ever, and she to us. In the sadness of this day, that fact gives me comfort. So here's to Grandma. And when this is over, let's everyone here and everyone with us on the live stream honor her memory by letting laughter continue to bind us together.
I'm going to be lowering one, and you can follow by we're going to be covering the casket now. Maybe John, if you want to go first. It's a Jewish custom to first start by holding the shovel upside up to really show reluctance to do this. The tradition is to say the Kaddish after we cover the casket. And the tradition is to have 10 people present. I just talked to the people from the funeral home. It seemed to be that we are one short, so with their permission, I'd like to ask somebody that online, it could be anybody, to join us when we say the Kaddish, and each one online will actually be the person that presumably complete our minyan. So in that respect, we'll be one together with everybody here and the people online. The Kaddish that we'll be saying is what referred to as Kaddish Yatom. It's the one that the mourners say, it's not the one that managed by the rabbis. So if you look in your books, you at home, it will be the shorter version, the Kaddish Yatom. I'll proceed with El Maleh Rachamim, which is a prayer that usher the soul of Lorraine to the next step. אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במורמים, המצם הנוחה נכונה, על כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת רוניה, בת חנה, שלמה ויהודה, שהלכה לעולמה בעבור שבלי נדר, ניתן כולנו צדקה בעד הזכרת נשמתה, בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתה, לכן בעל הרחמים, יסתירה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. השם הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר, and let us say, Amen. There is one more prayer. It's affirming that God is just. גדול העצה ורב העלילה, אשר עיניך פקוחות כל דרכי בני אדם. You in heaven that see all our deeds and our doing. לתת לאיש כדרכיו וכפרי מעלליו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולת בו. To give us according to our deed and to let us know that God is upright and straight and God is moral. והוא רחום, אדוני נתן, אדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. God give, God take, may the name of God be blessed. And let's do the Kaddish now. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועל מה דברה חירותה, וימליך מלכותה, בחייכון ובמלכון, ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואימו אמן. יהי שמי רב המבורך, לעולם על מי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריך הוא, לעולם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, ואמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, בחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמו אמן. עושה שלום במרומו, הוא יעשה שלום. עלינו ועל כל ישראל, So, we that are not from the immediate family, just maybe step aside right there, and we leave you guys